Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me one go home. Day-o, day-o.
Hi, I'm Rob Epstein, the director of the Times of Harvey Milk, and you're watching Barry Z.
Hi, it's Barry Z from The Barry Z Show, spending Monday night with Oscar and Rob Epstein, the director of the Times of Harvey Milk.
Thank you.
And how does it feel to have Oscar in the back of us?
He's big. He's tall. He's taller than we are.
He's got a nice body, too. I wonder who modeled for him.
You should have him turn around and see his backside.
I'm taking him home after this. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Hi, it's Barry Z from The Barry Z Show, spending Monday night with Oscar, right? With director Rob Epstein.
That's right.
You want to stand in front of your Oscar?
Oh, well, I have a real one. I have two, actually, but it's nice to see the big one.
Tell us about the two you have.
One for the Times of Harvey Milk and the other for Common Threads, both feature documentaries.
Tell me about the Times of Harvey Milk.
Times of Harvey Milk is a feature documentary about Harvey Milk, who was the first gay elected official in California, who was assassinated 10 months after being elected in office.
On November 27, 1978, San Francisco's Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk were assassinated in City Hall. Harvey Milk had served only 11 months on San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, but he had already come to represent something far greater than his office. A year before he was gunned down, Harvey Milk tape-recorded a will.
This is to be played only in the event of my death by assassination. I fully realize that a person who stands for what I stand for, an activist, gay activist, becomes the target or the potential target for somebody who is insecure, terrified, afraid, or very disturbed themselves. Knowing that I could be assassinated at any moment, or any time, I feel it's important that some people know my thoughts. I stood for more than just a candidate. I have never considered myself a candidate. I have always considered myself part of a movement, part of a candidacy. I wish I had time to explain everything I did. Almost everything was done in the eyes of the gay movement.
Why did you decide to do a documentary about his life? Did you know him personally?
I did know him personally.
You did?
I did. And I lived in San Francisco through the events and had to tell the story. I think having lived there, having experienced it, having understood that this story wasn't yet getting out there, that was the motivation, that was the impulse. And now it's being made into a feature film, so it will be making its way to the multiplexes.
Starring who?
Sean Penn is playing Harvey Milk, directed by Gus Van Sant.
What is the story about?
Well, the story is about the rise of Harvey Milk from a grassroots community activist to an elected official in California, and then the standard bearer for the very early anti-gay initiative fights that started happening in the 70s and continue to this day.
When does the story take place?
The story takes place 1978-1979 in San Francisco.
He never stopped, and he did most of everything himself, which meant, every day he was out in the street to hit the morning rush hour and the afternoon rush hour. He'd walk precincts, he'd go to shops, door to door.
At the age of 47, on his fourth try for public office, Harvey Milk was elected to San Francisco's Board of Supervisors.
Find the title for me, The Times of Harvey Milk. It's not The Life and Times of Harvey Milk, is it?
Exactly. That's a really good point, because we made the decision that it would not be a biographical film about Harvey Milk. It was really about the times in which he lived, and he was important because he understood his place in history. He understood his place in that moment, and we wanted the film to be a reflection of those times.
After college, he joined the Navy. Then he began a career as a stock analyst on Wall Street. What was not on the resume was his homosexuality, which Harvey Milk had known about since he was 14. In the 1960s, Harvey Milk took a step-off course. He befriended avant-garde theater people, then worked his way into a producing job on Broadway. By the beginning of the 70s, Harvey Milk had marched in anti-war demonstrations, burned his Bank AmeriCard in protest, and emigrated to San Francisco. He and lover Scott Smith settled down and opened a camera store on Castro Street, in a quiet old neighborhood soon to become known as the Castro. Harvey Milk threw himself into neighborhood politics. When he dubbed himself the mayor of Castro Street, the idea stuck. In 1973, he tried to make it official by running for the Board of Supervisors, San Francisco's city council.
Who assassinated him?
Dan White was the assassin, and Dan White was, in fact, a colleague of Milk's on the city council. And prior to being elected to the city council, he was a fireman, and prior to that, he was a police officer.
At approximately 10:45 a.m., realizing he was not going to be reappointed, Dan White went directly to the mayor's office, unannounced. There was a brief argument. Dan White pulled out a gun and shot George Moscone. The mayor fell, and White fired 2 more bullets into his head. White then reloaded his gun. He walked to the other side of City Hall and into Harvey Milk's office. 5 shots rang out. According to the coroner's report, Harvey Milk was rising, both hands out in front of him when the first shot hit. He fell. White fired 3 more times. He leaned over and from above put the gun nearly against Harvey Milk's head and fired a last time.
I want to take you home. We can rent Common Threads, right? The Word is Out, and The Times of Harvey Milk.
And The Celluloid Closet.
Oh, my God, that was yours, too. You worked with Vito Russo on that, huh?
Yes, my dear friend Vito. I did, indeed.
This was not going to happen to me. You know, it was like 3 or 4 years all this was going on, and it didn't reach me in a scary sense until it became clear that anybody could get AIDS. I mean, suddenly I was knowing a dozen people who were sick instead of 2. Suddenly there were 30 people who were sick instead of 4. And it hit you like an overwhelming wave of water. I mean, suddenly cold water was thrown in your face. Everybody was dying.
I've always thought of my basic commitments, other than as to, than say to women, to my work, to writing, to poetry, to doing what it was in me to do as a creative person. If there was a problem connected with my temperament of being lesbian, before and even after I became aware of its connotations, was the loneliness, the fact that I didn't know anybody like me. Who were the others, if there were any? Where were they?
A very good example is a Chaplin film, Behind the Screen. There's an extraordinary moment where Chaplin kisses someone who looks like a man. He knows that it's a woman. And someone else comes along and sees it and immediately starts swishing around in the most kind of overt, effeminate way. It's fascinating that those stereotypes were so completely in place that a mainstream popular film could assume that the audience would know what this this swishy mime was all about.